Shortly after I filed my formal EEOC complaint, I had my first meeting with an EEOC counselor. Now, she was contracted by the agency, so she wasn't completely independent, but she was the first person that I talked to about my case who at least wasn't on the agency's payroll. I don't think I totally understood the concept of counseling and what it was supposed to be about, but looking back, my counselor did 4 big things for me that I think everybody should be aware of, so I'm going to walk you through those today. First, she listened to my concerns, and it felt really good to be heard, finally. Unfortunately, she also listened when I misspoke about some aspects of my case, so be careful what you say. For instance, I told my counselor that I didn't mind having to enter my time daily, even though none of my coworkers had to do it. What I meant was that because my boss was constantly accusing me of being AWOL, it was smart for me to enter my time daily. My counselor took that to mean that I hadn't suffered any real harm because I did say that I didn't mind. It's probably best to avoid saying anything that minimizes what your employer did. I know sometimes we tell ourselves that it wasn't that bad just to get through it, but it's probably a good idea not to say that to EEOC. Another thing to avoid is making excuses for your employer. My counselor asked why I thought my boss had done what she did, and I told her the truth. I really didn't know, but judging by the timing, I thought it was because I had asked for reasonable accommodation. A lot of times, people will say things like, "Oh, my boss got mad at me because I made her look bad in a meeting," or "she got mad because I snubbed her at some event." If you say something like that to an EEOC counselor, what they're probably going to hear is that it wasn't because of your membership in a protected class, and that's the end of your case. So why did my boss do it? Because I was female, old, disabled. In short, because of my membership in a protected class. That's the only excuse we need. My counselor also tried to work out a solution with NASA. To do that, your counselor is going to need to know what happened, so it's a good idea to prepare for this meeting by taking a list of allegations that you have, along with dates, times, and the names of the officials who were involved. They'll also want to know what relief you're seeking. For me, that was just reasonable accommodation, but for you, it may be something like reinstatement, back pay, whatever it is that you need to be okay. Now, I know we've all heard terrible things about EEOC, but a lot of cases do get worked out at this stage, so keep an open mind. My counselor evaluated my PRIMA FACIE case of discrimination. She's the one who made the determination that the discrimination could have occurred. And at this stage, we don't need airtight evidence of everything we're alleging. We just need enough evidence to convince a person who wants to believe us, a person like our counselor, that the discrimination could have occurred. My PRIMA FACIE case for failure to accommodate was pretty much based on 2 pieces of evidence. Number 1 was an email from me to my boss requesting a meeting to discuss my health and plans going forward, which HR said she should recognize as a request for reasonable accommodation. And the second was a form that NASA presented showing that I had been reasonably accommodated. NASA presented that as their defense, but it ended up doing me more good than it did them, because the fine print on that form said that, yeah, I could request those accommodations subject to supervisory approval with at least 2 days' notice. I didn't have 2 days' notice of my medical emergencies, so it was pretty obvious that wasn't going to work. Those 2 things were all my counselor needed to decide that, yeah, there could have been some discrimination here. I think a lot of us go into that first interview with every bit of evidence we have, and since the counselor only needs enough to conclude that there could have been discrimination, I think that's a mistake. Because anything extra that we provide to the counselor, we're also giving to our employer. There's one thing that an EEOC counselor does for us that can have a tremendous aspect on whether you win or lose your case, and it's not talked about a lot. They take our allegations and turn them into a set of actionable legal claims. And the exact wording of those claims can have an impact on your case years later in unexpected ways. Like at my hearing, right after my boss messed up and admitted that she'd never let me use telework as reasonable accommodation, NASA's attorney still tried to pull out a victory based on a technicality. She said my original claim was about me losing my flexible schedule, not about telework. In the beginning, my flexible schedule was my biggest concern. That was the only thing that had let me manage my disability to that point. I told my counselor that I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to use telework either, because of the fine print on NASA's form, and also because my boss had told me that she wasn't going to let me use it. So luckily, my counselor included that concern in my claim for failure to accommodate. I got lucky. I don't want you to have to rely on luck, so let's talk about a couple things that you can do to help your counselor get it right. If you've taken my advice so far in this video, you've gone in to see your counselor with a list of allegations and grievances, with times, dates, and all the other details that I suggested. But that list by itself isn't a list of actionable legal claims. For them to actually become a legal claim, you need to allege a basis for the discrimination, and you also need to spell out the harm they did and the remedies you're seeking. The counselor gathers all that information from talking to us, and our list of allegations and grievances goes a long way toward that. But in addition to that list of allegations, I think we also need to talk about our concerns for the future, our fears about what might happen if we're not able to resolve this now, and also talk about why we have those concerns. When my counselor was drafting my legal claims, I hadn't actually been denied telework at that point. But I did know that I was never going to be allowed to use it, because NASA said that in order for me to use telework as a reasonable accommodation, I needed supervisory approval, and my supervisor had already told me I was never going to get that. So in the legal claims that my counselor drafted on my behalf, she included my concern that I wouldn't be able to use telework. Now, because my boss hadn't denied telework yet, I had no proof, but if I hadn't mentioned that concern, my claim would have been written around my flexible schedule pretty much exclusively. I could have still lost on a technicality. Courts can only make a determination about the specific legal claims that we bring forward. It's important to get your claims right, and a good counselor can help you do that. So that's it today. I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, take care and hang in. Fight smart and hang in to win. Hey, if you're digging this content, please hit the like button for me. It really helps.